So thankful to be back on Mastering Counseling today. We are so excited to talk to Candice Lawhorn, who has a ton of background and expertise in mental health. Welcome to the show today, Candice.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
We are going to talk about her work a little bit with a group that she offers some mental health therapy to, but her main work that we'll focus on is her Mental Health Mingle, I would say almost business and website, which is a platform for different mental health people to connect and much, much more. So why don't you start off with telling us what gave you that idea to start that website and what it's all about?
So it started during COVID. It kind of was born out of a need for connection and support between mental health professionals. You get used to being in a practice and walking across the hall when you need a consultation. You're like, hey, what do you think about this? Got any ideas? Got any referrals? And all of a sudden we come into the office one day and they're like, we're going to be going home. So good luck.
Mhm.
And, you realize you don't have everyone right across the hall to bounce ideas off of. So I started looking around. And when I couldn't find anything, I thought, I'll just build it myself.
There you go. Let's talk about the name a little bit. I love it. Mingle's always such a fun word. Did you know you wanted to name it that all along, or how did you come to that name?
I did not. And in fact, it started out as something else. And then we realized through further investigation that it was a little too close to something similar. And I didn't want it to be confusing for people. So I don't know. I just kind of made like a list of a gazillion and then just kind of whittled it down from there. I knew I wanted it to scream mental health because that's the professionals that, we're geared towards, but also let them know that it's kind of like, this is just mingling. Like we're just, this is professional, but informal. Like we just want you to come in here and feel okay. This is not a Facebook group.
Mm.
This is not drama filled. Like this is a professional atmosphere. So
Yeah, and I totally got that when I was looking at it myself. It seems like a safe space to ask real questions. And I know there's a free version, but then all the way to it looks like you're offering continuing credits and education. So maybe why don't you share with us kind of all the different commitment levels that people can make with Mental Health Mingle?
yeah, so we want to offer it to as many people as possible. And I'm big on everyone having access to something, you know. So I didn't want to charge for the entire site. I mean, I don't that's ridiculous. The
Mhm.
whole point is community and sharing with other
Mhm.
professionals. So we have the free version. You have the blog, some of the resources, and then forum where we do have questions and I will post links to continuing education courses there, links to different websites that people can draw from, links to any studies that have been done or, things like that. I've started posting jobs, so that's
Mm.
something we're kind of getting more into. So far, being in Alabama, most of the jobs are here, but we are branching into other states to kind of, because, it's going to be for people all over being online. So we want to
Right.
offer those job options. So the exclusive access for the all access membership, it's a one-time payment, and that is just to cover the cost of the time that goes into building the continuing education courses and, making all of these documents because they're actual like templates for like business stuff, like
Mm.
how to make a business plan, how to set up your paperwork when you go into private practice, and then the actual case management side of progress note templates and things you can use with clients. And as much as I would love to give that free to everyone, you got to take hours off work to make it and you got to
Yeah.
compensate for those hours. And I mean, the website is not free to run, so we're not looking at making a huge profit. It's just giving those things out as economically as possible while still not going into the red trying to do that.
No, I mean, I think that's so fair. I mean, you're offering a place for people to kind of get to know it or just communicate. But I mean, just like anyone buying a book or anything like that. And, myself designing templates and all that has never been a strong suit. So if I find someone who can do it, of course you want to pay them. So I think that that is great that you're offering that to people. Let's talk, because we do talk a lot about the business side on this podcast, the business side of counseling. So let's talk even more specifically about some of the templates and ways that you would use it. Would there be like a small course on setting up your practice? And then these are some ways that you can do consultations. Give us some more specifics about the tools that you provide.
Yes. So another thing with the access to the different groups that we have. So we have co-working groups where I think a lot of people have heard of these, where you will log in and you're co-working with people, but you're not, kind of like body doubling. So you're working with people, but you're doing your own thing. It's just having that person there to hold you accountable so that you all get stuff done. And then specialized groups where people can join if they're marriage and family counselors, or they specialize in something specific like autism or trauma or things like that. And so we're trying to work on adding more and more, like you said, just videos that kind of are like, hey, you're working in this field. Here's some things that we can provide to you, and this is how you can implement them.
Okay. I'm guessing, did you start out a little smaller? You started during the pandemic, like with smaller groups, and now I'm thinking it's grown to many types of therapists and all different niches.
Yes, we're still growing though. We're still growing.
Okay.
I will tell you, and this is a big reason I wanted to help also add in the business function of this, because you realize you get out of school and you're like, they taught us therapy, but they taught us nothing about running a business.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know marketing skills. So me trying to market this website has been a fun learning experience.
So
It's
you guys, now you mentioned you pay for the website. Eventually you brought in someone to handle that part of it.
That's still me. I'm on it.
Oh, okay.
I'm
All
on it.
right.
I do, like I've hired people to do the marketing plans for me, business plans, all that stuff, to help me set up the website. But as far as running it now, as of
Okay.
now, I'm able to keep up with it. We'll
All
see how
right.
much longer that goes.
Yeah. That's the most common thing we hear on here is we were all trained to be a therapist or a counselor, and very few were trained. Or, we've heard from a lot of people who just want to help the therapist. So they only do the business part. And then,
Yeah,
but you guys are definitely doing a little both for sure. So,
we are. And I
um,
have, we also sell templates on Etsy, just
oh,
the therapist templates for all kinds of
yeah.
things like coping skills or whatever. And, that was another thing about having the all access, is that we could incorporate some of those into that, where they get that for that one price fee instead of having to go out there and pay for every single little template. Like, if
Yeah.
you can get like 1,000 prompts for, questions in therapy for trauma focused therapy, who's trying to pay for 100 other items you don't need? You
Mhm.
just need the questions, So nobody
Right.
wants to have to go out there and pay for that.
Right. Thanks for clarifying that. Just kind of talk about year by year. You started, I assume, in 2020 or 2021?
So we started with the idea in the later part of 2020, and then it was
Okay.
kind of figuring out how we're going to implement it. What system are we going to use? And so we just started getting the website up later part of like 2022. So we're
Okay.
still pretty new.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And then, and what kind of numbers are we talking about? Like, how many people would you say are functioning, or do they kind of come and go, or do they stay with you? The clients
Some
who are
come and
using it.
go, some, I think it's like any other community. You have people that will create an account, but you never see them post, but you
Mhm.
constantly see them on. So you
Mhm.
know that they're reading other people's stuff, but, not necessarily engaging every day. Again, we don't have huge numbers at the moment because we're still growing, which is another reason I wanted to get out there and do
Mhm.
podcasts. And I just so firmly believe this is something good to help mental health professionals. We really can't find anywhere else. And
Right.
so, you just want to get it out to as many people as you can. I think currently we probably have about 1,000 that are like
Okay.
constant,
Yeah.
becoming engaged.
Wow. And so then what does that look like on the people running it? Is it only you? How many support people are helping you? Or are you doing all of it?
So right now, it's me and like bot moderators that help flag
Okay.
things and kind of send it through. But so far, it's just me. I'm a member of several listservs, and so they'll push out like weekly newsletters to me, and then I just go through every one of them and individually post those CE links or those opportunities or those things in whatever, section of the forum that it would go in so people can have that information.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds definitely like a lot for sure. And we know you have other things that are going on as well, which we will
Yeah.
definitely talk about in a minute. But let's talk about your blog is linked on the Mental Health Mingle site as well. And why don't you just tell us about your most recent blog ideas? Do you think about them a long time? Does it just kind of come to you, or how do you get those ideas and share them?
So I have tons. Like I have a whole spreadsheet list of ideas. My mind goes, I have ADHD, so my mind's like 1,000 miles an hour every day. So anytime I get a new idea, I just throw it on the list. And every time it's time to write one, I just kind of go through the list and see like what's applicable to what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like with summer, it would be different things like how can you handle your practice slowing down during the summer, because we know people take vacations, and then that kind of leaves you with not knowing exactly when you're going to be able to fill these slots.
Mm-hmm.
But self-care, and then like in the winter it's more geared towards seasonal depression and things like that. So
Yeah, I did. The summer one was the one that I scrolled through, and definitely applicable because it is just a different time in summer. Lots of things people want to be less committed, even to probably their own therapy and mental health, because in some ways they're getting it in a different way, more
yeah.
sunshine and hopefully a little more fun. So, yeah. So, not only are you running all of this, but you're also a mental health professional in marriage and family counseling. So, can you talk to us about that and how much you're still involved with it, and maybe even go back to your start in this field?
Okay. Well, I will say legally, I do not pay for the license for
Oh,
marriage and
okay.
family counseling. So I'm not an LMFT just because I refuse to pay for two licenses.
Okay.
But my degree is in marriage and family counseling. Um,
Okay.
so I went to school originally, got a degree in psychology, realized that they tell you nothing about the fact that you can't really get a great job with a bachelor's in psychology. So what's next? I spent several years having no idea what I wanted to do. And then my husband and I adopted two children from foster care. And going through that process, and I don't know if you're familiar with foster care, but you get a file and you look through and you'll get file after file after file. And you look through and see, is this something that will fit in with what goes on in our house? So we can handle this, whatever it is. And you see so many of these files and you just keep seeing how it's parents that are struggling, like they had abuse, and it's just this generational abuse that led to them losing their kids, or, are on drugs, but you see where they're diagnosed with bipolar or things that they're probably self-medicating for. And I remember telling my husband, like, I really wish that not just fostering children, but like helping these families stay together. Like, wouldn't it be better if we could get these people some more resources? So I decided to go back to school and do marriage and family and help, with things like that. I think if we could catch more stuff on the front end, we wouldn't, have all of
Yeah.
that on the back end.
No, I could not agree more. I myself fostered two children, and one ended up being adopted. So, yeah. And I think that in states, I will say in Michigan, they don't really hand you files, but they more just call and say, is your home open? But yeah, it's immense. And we know other people who help in the foster care world. And yeah, it's so tough. And I work at an elementary school as a school counselor. And yeah, you want to help the families because they really are wanting to give their best, but doesn't always meet the law requirements, hence kids going into foster care. And yeah, it's much needed. And as we sometimes say, it's like babies raising babies, and at
Yeah.
some point we want to stop that cycle. So
But, we
um
also say that there's a difference between dysfunctional and abusive. And I think,
mhm.
the more people we can reach at that dysfunctional stage so it doesn't reach that next stage, the better.
Right, right. There's a lot of gray on what is a good home life or not, right? Like we have the way we want to live, and there's other people living in ways that we might not prefer, but it might be still actually legal even if are not our preference. So
Yeah.
yeah, well, that's good to know that you are working in that and trying to help. And so are you still seeing clients in part of the group practice you're in?
I do. I let my own private practice go, and because it's too hard to keep up with every aspect of that business and this. So I do contract work with two different group practices. I do contract work at PESIC Counseling in Alena, Alabama, and then SOAR Counseling in Coleman, Alabama. Because I'm strictly
Okay.
telehealth, so doesn't matter
Mhm.
where they're at in the state. I can
Yeah.
see anyone.
Okay. Wow. So you are very busy. And do you kind of you contract out? Do you give like a 1 day a week to that, or every week looks different because of all the work you're doing with Mental Health Mingle? How do you structure your schedule and, of course, make time for your own personal life and goals?
Well, there are certain times during the week that I'll look at my calendar and I'm like, okay, this has to be like, this is my due date. So Tuesday's out, like can't see clients in the afternoon. And I'll notate that. And I have all my calendars synced to where,
Okay.
if someone puts something on the calendar at PESIC, it pops up as it being marked off as SOAR. So I don't double book. And then at the beginning of the week, I'll just go through, and the times that I don't already have clients on the books, I will just go in there and start plugging in slots that's like private time, private time, private time. And that's
Okay.
usually when I focus on Mental Health Mingle.
Okay. All right. Always good to know how people are balancing schedules and calendars. And especially, I think, in telehealth too. Like, I mean, it's like easier, but then you have to check a lot, right? If people have signed up and what has filled up, what has canceled, and it's
Yeah.
evolving all the time for sure. So in your counseling, it showed that you use some practices like REBT. And can you talk about some of the specific approaches that you use?
So I do use REBT a lot because I do believe that, our thoughts drive our emotions that then drive our behavior. And
Mhm.
so if we're having constant negative thinking, then obviously that's going to come out in our behavior. I mean, if we're thinking that way, we're going to lash out in those ways. And people have different reasons for why they get into those negative thinking patterns. So I think it's, one of the best ways to help give them tools to kind of identify those irrational beliefs so that we can start challenging them and kind of, I describe it to people as kind of let's rewire your brain to default to positive instead of negative.
Mhm.
Let's get you to a better place. I don't, one thing I think is so helpful that I don't personally do is EMDR for
Mhm.
trauma, but I do refer those out to others in the practice at PESIC that do EMDR. I've found that to be very successful with people with
Mhm.
trauma, especially
Yeah.
adults with its, just that long, like lifetime trauma they've dealt with that nothing else has helped.
Yeah. And
Um,
just for our newer listeners, will you give all the words of REBT and EMDR just so people kind of have a general idea if they're not as familiar with those approaches?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people may not be. I
Right.
mean, why would you be?
Right.
So, REBT is rational emotive behavior therapy. So, basically, exactly like it sounds, just,
Hmm.
and EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Mhm.
And it is so beyond me. Like, I looked at training in that and was like, I got enough going on. I don't need that. But
Mhm.
I am so in awe of people that do EMDR. It seems very complicated.
Yeah, we've talked about it with multiple people on here, and yeah, it's pretty fascinating
Yeah.
to me, especially like you said in those really deep traumas. That so much with the brain and the rewiring and the body and all of that. It's amazing to study, but yeah, we can't all be experts in everything for sure. So I get that, but it's good that you have people that you can refer out to as well. So let's talk a little more about, the future of a mental health mingle. Do you guys have big ideas? I know you've said a few times that you're continuing to grow. How do you see evolving over the next few years, or maybe even beyond that, 5 to 10 years?
Oh my gosh, there are so many things we want to do. I really want to get more of the job placement stuff there because,
Mhm.
I mean, you have Indeed and Monster.com, and all those are great, but they're not geared to any one specific profession. And I think that,
Mhm.
if there were a place, like a centralized place that people could post just jobs for mental health professionals, it would be
Mhm.
the perfect place for people to be able to, hook up with, people that are therapists able to hook up with those people that need them because there's such a mental health shortage in so many places. And apparently there's a disconnect somewhere.
Mhm.
People aren't seeing the jobs, or the right people aren't seeing the jobs, or I mean, I don't know what the issue is, but we're trying to fix it. So,
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like the licensing is a huge factor, and then especially
yes.
with telehealth, and then the different states having these requirements, or, are you licensed in a specific niche? Are you general marriage and family?
Yeah.
All of that is, I think it varies across state lines. And it's so many hours, right? Like to be
Yeah.
nationally certified, like,
Yeah.
you need the people to be supervisors and the people to give the time. I think and rightly so. You don't want to be handing out licenses like candy, but
Yeah.
I could see that being a little bit of a barrier. And
Yeah.
and then I just think so many more people wanting mental health, where before people were a little more private, and now it's just so common for people to be
Yeah.
having coaches and counselors. So,
I'm really hoping that the compact can help some of that. And that's kind of why we haven't done too much with that yet because, we're hoping the counseling compact will make it easier for people to practice across state lines. But,
mhm,
regardless of how people feel about better health and talk space and all that, they make me a little nervous because I do wonder about some of the ethics and licensing stuff.
mhm,
That's not to say they're not doing it right. It just makes me nervous. And I want to ensure that if we start putting those jobs out there that we know what we're talking about and we're not putting
mhm.
people in positions where they're doing something to lose their license over and not knowing it.
Right.
So,
And what is the counseling compact? We have not talked about that, and I have not explored it. So tell us about that.
so they started, I mean, I think this has been in the works for probably years, but they have been working on getting a compact to where each state that joins the compact will then have like reciprocity with other states so that
Gotcha.
you can't. I don't think anybody knows exactly how it's going to end up working. I don't know if they're going to just streamline the reciprocal paperwork because, some states already have reciprocal stuff. You just fill out their
Mhm,
paperwork, it's great, but not all states have it. So I
mhm.
don't know if they're going to try to just streamline the paperwork or if they're just going to say, hey, practice anywhere now.
Right.
I don't know. We're kind of waiting on some of that to come out, but
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's always the worst to be, like you said, when people want jobs and then there's holes in the industry and they somehow are not connecting. It's like, "Oh, this is not working."
right.
It's totally a bummer. So, let's talk about, though, for people who are going into this field, any advice or thoughts you have for people maybe in the middle of their program of study or about to graduate and probably will join a group or, clinical mental health in their local areas, but what would be some things that you would want them to know?
Personally, I think that I would be very, very particular when I went to decide what track I want to take. I don't know if all master's programs are set up that way, but ours was. It was marriage and family, clinical mental health, or school counseling. And
Mm,
I think, since graduating years ago, I've heard constantly over the years people that are like, oh, I really trapped myself with this license and this isn't what I need. Like, I don't really, and I don't know if you have this issue, but I know a lot of school counselors that get so frustrated because they thought they would be practicing counseling and
mm,
now they're just doing testing and they
mhm.
don't feel like they actually get to do what they went to school for.
Yeah. Yeah, bec a lot of secondary counselors, feel that way. Elementary, we are more with the kids and helping them with their problems. I
Nice.
definitely not therapists because they really need us. We don't have the time with 5 to 600 kids in a building to be their therapist, right? But yeah, we do get to do a lot more of the relational conflict resolution, that type of thing. But it's very true in the middle and high schools, a lot of scheduling. I've heard some of them share, like, oh, wow, I get to do one group over the whole year, focus on some type of topic, anger or whatever. And yeah, it's very dicey on the roles of what a school counselor should be for sure. So, and then a lot are, they are a school counselor by day, and in the evening or
Yeah.
weekends, they're doing some of their own practice because they get to use more of those tools. So,
Mhm. And also,
um,
like, just differentiating between, you know, do you want to be a psychologist, a social worker, a therapist? I mean,
mhm,
I don't think that they explain that a lot of times. It's kind of just wrapped into this one little package with a bow on it, and you get to
mhm,
school and you're like, yeah, that one sounds great. And
right,
then you realize that, like, I don't really like sitting in here all these hours just doing therapy. I would like to be able to provide resources, but I'm not a social worker. That's not my job.
mhm, yeah,
So maybe that should have been your job. I
right.
think those things are good to figure out ahead of time.
Yeah, almost like an exploratory class on all the different types of parts of the field because they are very different. Everyone thinks I'm a social worker, and I'm like, actually, no, I'm not. But it's the general public definitely doesn't understand all the separation of roles. So,
They do not, and they don't understand those letters. And that's another thing with learning what you can, because I joined the marriage and family track with the intent of getting my LMFT, but then we had to take like 2 more semesters for that, and my question was, what can I do with that I can't do with an LPC specializing in marriage and family counseling? Nothing.
mhm,
Well, then why am I gonna go 2 more semesters and pay for a whole whole 'nother license
yeah,
that I don't need?
right,
Nobody knows what those letters mean. They don't
right,
care.
right,
So, but, people don't know that.
right. Yeah, it's all about the relationship of the client and the patient, or sorry, they're the same client and therapist or
Yeah.
counselor. And people are not as worried about the letters come in when it's time to pay, right? That's
Right.
what. So, well, thank you for so much that you've shared with us today. And I hope people check out Mental Health Mingle. Is there anything else that you wanted to add that we didn't get to talk about or you wanted us to know about that platform?
Just, check us out. Like, it's free to check it out. And anyone has any suggestions, we are constantly working on adding different things. So any suggestions are always welcome. I mean, this is for the people, like the
Mhm.
professionals that who we're trying to help. So you got
Right.
suggestions, throw them at us.
Right, right. I love I'm lack of a better term, just hard work. I feel like you really want to help people succeed and you've given them multiple ways to do that. And yeah, mentalhealthmingle.com. It'll be listed as the show goes out, but check it out for sure. So thank you so much for giving us your time today, Candice.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in as well. We'd love to hear from you. Leave us comments or questions. And we look forward to more episodes on mastering counseling. I'm signing off for today. Have a wonderful day.